it was just because we weren't there the whole summer. And so I've been completely swamped with work for the past really 5 weeks. So it didn't hit me until just really yesterday was the worst day that I've had, because it hit me that, okay, the festival is over, and now what? And so now it becomes a little bit more real, and a little bit more, well, I guess real and heavy, because I couldn't think about it before. I had too much work to do.
It's kind of a blessing.
Yeah, and the memorial was absolutely unbelievable. There were hundreds of people. There were articles all over on the internet, on social media, everything about him. Um, so, that he's left a huge legacy, which I'm very, very proud of. But it's a big hole, and that's how I am.
Have you felt him around? I mean, sometimes people do feel a connection.
I just felt as if I was doing what he would want me to do, but I didn't feel him around. Strange thing though, which you might be able to explain, Gail. Um, a friend of mine passed away many years ago now, and she had this thing every time, this was when people used coins, and she had this thing every time when she would see a shiny penny, she would say, "Oh my goodness, that's my mother reaching out to me." So, twice in the past month, um, really in unlikely places, like on a walk between two villages in Vale, um, there was a shiny penny on the ground. Of course, Vale was his favorite place on earth. And then when I was getting out of the Uber on Sunday night, um, the gentleman who brought me home looked in the back seat after I left, or in the back seat, yeah, in that area. And he comes out with a shiny penny and he says, "I think you lost this."
Oh,
And I thought, well, I didn't have a shiny penny in my wallet for sure, because I don't carry coins. So where was this from, and why did he give it to me? Those were two sort of, if you could say, has he reached out to me? I don't know. Is this strange coincidences?
yeah. Well, they're improbable that you would have shiny pennies in that period of time. So if it's improbable statistically, then I think something else is going on. Like he's saying, "Hi, sweetie pie."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Did I don't know if I told you the story of my brother, but this
Go
this is
on.
this is me and my brother. I guess we were in junior high maybe, and my brother died about 3 years ago, and I knew that my carpet was terrible. I wanted to get rid of the carpet. I had too many books, too many clothes. I needed to go through all and change that. So I went to my yoga class, and when I came back, the toilet in the hall had flooded the whole house, and there was nothing wrong with the toilet. It was a total freak thing. So that meant my insurance paid thousands and thousands of dollars to clear everything out of my house, put in all new flooring, paint everything. I had to go through every single thing because everything was taken out. But there was one thing that was left, and that was in the closet here on the floor was this picture of me and my brother. So I figured that he had jimmied the toilet because he was an engineer, and he left this to say, "I did it. I'm thinking of you."
Oh my God. That's amazing.
Yeah, there was nothing wrong with the toilet. It was fine. It hadn't been used that morning. So it was pretty weird that I would go to yoga, be away, not be able to respond to it. And then
Wow.
flood the whole house.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I really appreciated that. And then I talked to a medium in Toronto who, a guy that I interviewed for my Visionary Scientist book, was really good. And she talked to him for me. And one of the things he mentioned is that I had written 5 books since he died, and I hadn't counted it up, and I didn't know. So I figured it. Yeah, he was right. And she also said he died in January. I said, no, I think it was later in. But no, she was right about that. So that was pretty specific again in terms of his spirit being around.
So can I have her name and
Yeah,
number?
I'll email you. Yeah,
Thank
she's good.
you.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Her name's Angie. And there's lots of people in near-death experiences or astral travel who explore the other dimensions and come back to tell about it. And one of the most interesting is Eben Alexander. I don't know if you all have heard of him, but he was a brain surgeon at Harvard Medical, materialist, scientific kind of guy. And he had a brain encephalitis kind of disease where he said his brain turned to pus, and he was totally out of it for at least a week. So he wasn't supposed to be able to remember everything. But in his book about access to heaven or whatever it is, he tells all the dimensions and encounters and what it was like on the other side. So that's from the perspective of a materialist scientist who became convinced that yes, the spirit continues, life goes on, and that materialism is short-sighted. And also it denies free will, because if you think that you're only the product of your chemistry, your physiology, you don't really have free will. But if you look that the spirit goes on and where we have consequences for our actions, it's a whole different story. Another person that's really interesting that you might like to read is Robert Monroe. And he was a conservative, non-woo-woo businessman in Virginia. And one time he found himself looking down on his body in bed, and he learned how to astral travel. And so now there are Monroe Institutes that teach people how to do that using binaural tones in the brain that allow people to astral travel. But it's really amazing because he writes in his books about traveling to the future. He said we have parts of our soul that are incarnated in other bodies and other dimensions. And he hopped into a body that was a Robert Monroe spirit in another dimension where the physics was different. And he said he made mistakes, he did inappropriate things. So he realized that was unethical and he wasn't going to hop into his or kind of his bodies again. Anyway, I really think Eben Alexander, Robert Monroe, there's a woman physician who was trapped in a kayaking accident, legs broken under the water for 30 minutes. And she talks about her near-death experiences, what it was like. There's another woman who had really advanced lymphoma. I think she was in Hong Kong. She was in the hospital dying, had some kind of near-death experience, was totally cured, that kind of thing. So, hi, Dave.
Hello.
Hi, Dave.
So if anybody wants lists, I can give them of what happens after death.
Well,
Yeah,
Gail,
I'd be interested in that.
Gail, and did you ever go to this death cafe? There are death cafes all over. Have you? No, you have. Well, I've never gone, but I read about them, and people, well, like a group, just it's very informal. You sit and you talk about death and dying, I suppose. Anyway, I just read about them in the New York Times, death cafes. But I also was going to ask you, Kathy, did you ever think of going to a bereavement group? A bereavement group? I went to two and I found them very helpful. Bereavement groups.
Well, thank you. I haven't thought about anything. I've been working night and day, trying to complete the festival, and life began yesterday. So
Yeah, and see, that I agree with what Gail said, that you were so busy and you just had to go on automatic pilot, and it was a blessing in a way because you wouldn't feel so much pain, but now all the busyness stopped, and now suffering and pain and your feelings are right there.
yes, thank you.
Yeah, we'll be your bereavement group.
Yes, oh yeah, yeah.
Linda, what have you been up to? Any comments? What's going on with you? Any thoughts for Kathy?
Well, what am I going? I still work a little bit. I'm doing more babysitting than I thought I ever would. Like my friends used to say, I used to say I'm never going to be one of those kind of grandmothers, but I ended up filling in when I'm needed. So I'm babysitting really a lot, but I'm enjoying it. I do a lot of political stuff. I'm so concerned about this election. So yesterday I spent the whole day at meetings, strategies. We write postcards, we make calls. I used to do a lot of canvassing, but of course with the pandemic, we stopped doing that, but I might start doing that again. So that's like my big issue right now.
I just read an article in the New York Times, I think, by a Democratic strategist. He said, I'm in 20, 30 years of doing this political work. I've never seen anything like the wave, the pink wave of women voting, registering to vote and voting like they did in Kansas. And so it's an amazing phenomena.
It
So
is, but you
turns
see,
everything upside down.
you see Herschel Walker is ahead in the polls, and you just can't believe it, and it just weighs on me. I can't separate it from my walk in Georgia, and I just think, and then you see in Mississippi where 80% of the people are Black, but they have no Black representative in their government, except for the mayor of Jackson. You just see that, and it just breaks my heart. And also you see the government now that it can turn now and be worse after November 11th. That's what I feel. Because if the Republic, that's how I feel. I shouldn't even be talking. This isn't a Republic.
Well, we can
that's
talk
where
about,
I am. You asked where I am, and that's where I am.
we can talk about whatever we
I work
want.
up every day. I wake up with the fear that McConnell and Mitchell will get. So that's mainly, other than what I'm doing with my family and my son. They finally set a date for their wedding in Puglia, Italy. You know, I had my first child when I was 40 and my second when I was 43. So
Wow.
The second is finally getting married, and promising me 2 more grandchildren. So
Yay.
I'm a little behind. So,
Well,
but I wanted to tell Kathy that, because I haven't seen you, I don't know, high school, that I came in on this, had no idea about Howard, and I'm so sorry. I mean, I'm just so sorry that, because I didn't have a clue. I just came in late to this, and I've only been to one other meeting, and I had no idea, and I'm just heartbroken for you.
Thank you.
Dave, do you want to say something about the Republican Christian point of view so we have a balance here?
I know, I think I
No. No,
Oh, come on.
I'm really on just to ask if each of you got my email about the reunion.
Yes, yes.
What did-
Thank you, Dave.
Everyone
Thank
get
you.
it? Henry, did you get it?
What did you
I-
say?
He's
Henry,
muted.
No, I got it. I'm on the phone.
Okay, all right, so I just wanted, I've only got a few minutes. I want to make sure everyone got it and want to encourage you to sign up and ask if there are any questions. And that's really why I wanted to get on this particular call.
Well, why, tell us how you're feeling. How's it?
I feel
How are
good
you?
about the reunion.
I'm sorry, I'm really hard of hearing. What did you say we're signing up for?
The
Reunion.
reunion next May.
Oh, the reunion. Okay, I thought it was for a Republican thing. Okay. I was like,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I can't.
Linda,
Yeah.
Linda, Dave was manipulating you to get to be Republican.
That's what I was going, no, I'm sorry.
David,
But I'm hard,
I had
I'm-
trouble getting on that website to sign up.
Really?
Yeah, so I don't know whether that was one of the things that I decided to do yesterday. So I don't know, I'm gonna try again. But I may have to contact you for that.
Yeah, please do. And like everyone else, I'm just so sorry for your loss, Kathy. That's just tragic.
Thanks.
And
Well, you know, when we missed seeing you in May, he was already, it was already pretty bad. So, yeah, didn't survive it.
we got to live every day and enjoy every day. We don't know how long we've got, right?
Absolutely.
And you know what? And you've got to be so grateful every day. So it's not
Oh,
just,
yes.
just appreciating the gift of life.
yeah, no, and make a little gratitude list and I try to do that. In fact, my mother, who's almost 103, says, my attitude is gratitude. My attitude is gratitude.
Wow, your mother.
She learned it from Dave Kuhn. See, there's Dave. That's Dave.
That's Dave
Dave.
and your mom and you?
Yeah,
Dave, I
Wow.
can't see Dave who?
Dave
Kuhn.
Kuhn.
Huh?
Me,
That's Dave.
That
Wow.
I love
looks
Dan.
like him.
She is an inspiration. She's a wonderful person,
Wow.
great attitude, and just trying to get Dan to have her same attitude.
I know. I know. I know. I thank you, Dave. I'm trying desperately every day to get her attitude.
Dave, I really would like you to say just a bit about a Republican point of view, what you think is going on with our country, so we have a balance here.
Well, I don't think it's gonna be productive with this group, or probably,
We don't care. We just want to know what you think. We're not trying to convince anybody.
I'm very distressed with the way we're divided as a country.
I think we all are.
I think Trump running again would be a disaster.
I hope he does, because I think he'll lose.
You hope he runs?
I hope he runs because I think he'll lose.
Yeah, I know, that's the only reason.
I hope somebody runs who can unite us. So
Do you
Yes,
think
Dave.
DeSantis,
yes.
do you think DeSantis is that guy?
I don't know. Personally, I prefer Pompeo. But
Oh.
Yeah,
Pompeo?
He was
I
secretary
won't say
of,
anything. I gotta keep quiet.
General Pompeo.
Dave, what office did he hold? I forget.
he was Secretary of State,
Yeah.
had the Abraham Accords and brought Israel back into full recognition and moved the embassy to Jerusalem. And I think he did a lot of great things, but I don't think Linda and I are going to agree on much.
We don't need to agree. We just want to
Yeah,
hear
yeah.
what each other
Yeah,
think.
yeah, Dave, I think it's healthy. See, because it is so divided.
So
And yet-
divided, yeah.
It's, I mean, more than I ever remember, even in the 60s, it was divided. But Dave, let me just say quickly, like, say, for instance, in the 60s, the Vietnam War and everything divided the country. But me personally, and I know I speak for Joel Rosenberg and John Lees and Kent, I do, that you and Bill Crouch and Dennis Griffin and other people that served in Vietnam, none of us hold, how can I say it? You're still my close friend, and I feel.
And we're honored for doing duty to the country.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. And so these things that divide the country, I hope it doesn't divide us as friends and classmates and lifelong friends. And maybe, I've never had a discussion with someone who supported Trump. I've never had a real discussion. And so I think it could be very, very healthy.
Well, let me say this. I thought from the beginning Trump was a clown. Okay. I admit I voted for him. I had to hold my nose when I pulled the lever. I really hope he doesn't run again. I think he was very divisive. As opposed to probably Linda, I agree with some of his policies. I think not having control of the border is disastrous, and there are lots of other things I agree with his thinking. I think the person, though, is horrible, and I think he would be more divisive. And I don't see anybody who's really a uniter. I know our current president ran on that basis, but when he calls me whatever he calls me, deplorable, whatever, that doesn't help me get behind him. So I guess that's my viewpoint, is we need somebody who can bring us together.
Yes, Dave, I'm so glad to hear what you just said, because a lot, when I read the New York Times or I see the news, and yes, I'm biased, so I watch MSNBC, CNN, those, never Fox. Well, sometimes just but then I do think, oh my God, they're deplorable. But see, but Dave, I don't think you are deplorable, or Bill or Dennis. Do you know what I mean? So it's very therapeutic and healthy to have this discussion.
How do you deal with the lie,
Yeah.
the steal?
Well, I
You
think
know
he
what?
lost the election. He should accept that. And again, like, he should move on. He can play whatever role he wants. If his role ends up being kingmaker, I guess it's okay with me. I prefer no role, and I would prefer a new leadership, including getting Mitch McConnell out and some other people. But I don't feel real positive about the current leader or Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi. So
Yeah. But see, can I just blurt? Could I just blurt this out? See, of all the things he's done that really are despicable and disgusting and illegal and immoral and that, and like a long time ago, well, even my little grandchildren know you do not make fun of disabled people. It's just, any decent, you don't. And that alone, this is publicly making fun. Yes, mocking and mimicking. What kind of human being as an adult would do something like that? I mean, that's just one teeny weeny itty bitty example anyway. But
Can I just
I
say
agree
one
on that.
thing, though? Can I
Yeah.
just say one thing? The Republican Party is not necessarily Trump, as Dave is an example. The
yeah,
problem
that's-
that we have in this country is the polarizing. And we did not grow up with that. And so for us, it's a very uncomfortable situation.
yes,
And I
Kathy.
agree with Dave that we need someone who says, look, I'll listen to what you have to say. I'll listen to what you have to say. We are in this together.
But those people get knocked out because they can't win.
In
That's the
primary-
problem.
In the primaries.
They
You know-
get knocked out of the primaries.
Well, Joel
that-
Rosenberg and I had a discussion offline, and it was very comfortable and very pleasant.
Oh, great.
Polar different in our viewpoint, but not
Oh,
necessarily.
that's so
We both
good.
agree we love the country. We want to see the country get back to where it was. I think all of us would like to see an era which picked Truman or Eisenhower, two, a Democrat and a Republican, but the country was united. The country was,
And Dave,
I'd like to see.
you were at West Point and you were a military person. It was Dwight D. Eisenhower who first coined the term military industrial complex.
Right.
And
I like Ike, and I liked him too.
Where is he now? We need to
Yeah.
well, I'm going to vote for Dave Kuhn and Joel Rosenberg as uniters.
Yeah.
That's great. Dave, we're going to talk about our adventures. And since you have to leave at some point, could you start us off with, when you think back through your life, what was an adventure that was like, whoa, that was amazing?
Going to Yountville.
Yeah,
Going,
I think being in Dan Hayton's backyard, doing gymnastics, diving into his pool. I have so many, life has been, I think, very good to me and to my family. I don't have any that stick out. It's particularly, I have close calls with death a few times, but certainly my marriage, my birth of my children were unbelievably impactful. So I can't point to one, sorry.
What was it like when you first piloted like a fighter plane? When you're the pilot in charge of that powerful engine?
Okay, I'll tell you one story about a near-death experience, okay?
Oh, good.
I was in pilot training and we were learning to fly a third plane really, but a supersonic jet, high performance, called a T-38. And when you learn to solo, you get to a certain level, I think flight level, which is, I should say, 31,000 feet, you'd level off and do a after takeoff checklist. So I was just did solo before and got up, leveled off, started running through my after takeoff checklist. I look up in the window and I see another plane coming right at me.
Oh my gosh.
And there was no time to react. I figured later our closing speed was over 1,000 miles an hour.
ah,
So it's coming at me, I'm going like that. And if I'd been 10 feet left, I'd be dead. I had no time to turn and went right past each other. So close I could look, I could see the fear in the two pilots. They could see the fear in me. And I just thought somebody upstairs is looking out for me because I should be dead. I spent the rest of the flight just kind of shaking and wondering what the hell happened. Went back and reported it, and it turned out they had a bad procedure because they had other planes at the same altitude practicing formation training. And that's what these two guys were doing, and this one plane was doing. So they changed it, but it was, and it's kind of interesting because the squadron commander pleaded with me not to report it. He would get a lot of trouble if there was been a near miss like that. So I don't think I reported it, but they at least corrected the problem. That was probably my first real near-death experience.
wow.
It was exciting to say the least.
Adrenaline goes sky high.
Right.
Were you at the birth of your kids?
Yes,
That's pretty exciting to see a human being come into life.
absolutely.
Yeah. Let me read. Joel couldn't come and he sends his regards and his adventures. So I'm gonna read that, and it's mostly about his travels. So if you've been to one of these countries, raise your hand. He said, I wanted to talk about my adventures. This is Joel Rosenberg. however briefly, restricted here to travel adventures. I've traveled through 15 countries of Europe and Western Middle East in the summer of 1969, including hitchhiking across Greece. Who's been to Greece? Okay. With some people I met along the way. I've traveled cumulative to 36 countries, with the most meaningful to Southeast Asia, which took me to Singapore, Bali, Thailand, South Africa. Oh, good for you guys. And Japan, Berlin, Krakow, Prague, let's see, Auschwitz, Ireland, Dublin. My favorite cities or towns are Prague, which I visited 3 times, Jerusalem, where I've been 3 times for parts of summer, Ubud in Bali, Kyoto, Japan. And although he said we traveled to Hiroshima, which is a powerfully thought-provoking and in its way beautiful place, and Dublin, where we befriended an amazing bookstore proprietor named PJ Murphy, whose stores honors and celebrates Joyce's writings. I think of Japan and Ireland as bookends of a sort, enclosing many societies in 2 directions. My finest meal was at a Georgian restaurant in Budapest on New Year's Eve, 1991. I had with me 2 French women. One was from Quebec, friends of each other who I had befriended on the train from Prague. We met every evening for dinner to talk about our experiences of the day. Maybe all those places don't count as adventures, but they surely were for me and for Carol, his wife, when she was with me. Meanwhile, I've been to and from Europe as many to 20, 30 times, especially to visit Uni High graduate Chris Cabot, who passed away from COVID in early 2020.
Who did?
Chris Cabot, Cabot, C-A-B-O-T. Did you know him, Danny?
Yeah, Chris Cabot. His father was the actor Sebastian Cabot. And Chris, he went to our high school for a while. And then, anyway.
Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah, and Joel and Chris and John Lees were very close, the 3 of them. Oh, and then Chris wanted to be a bullfighter too, and went down and stayed with Kent in Mexico City and was, no, really, he was bullfighting for a while. Oh, and so was the brother of Rose. Wait, your brother-in-law, Dave.
That's Deb.
Wasn't he? And he was trying to be a bullfighter too.
No, Munoz and a couple others, but not Eddie.
Oh, I thought he was.
Oh, gosh.
But Dave, before you go, I just want to say it's great. It's wonderful to see you, even though it's not in person and it's on Zoom. And no, you're the opposite of deplorable. You're the opposite of really.
I don't think
Thank you,
Biden
Dan.
said that.
Well, you're not a MAGA, so, you know.
Oh, good distinction. Or
Yeah.
and Dave is not a member of the Proud Boys or QAnon.
Oh,
And
God.
thank you, Dave, for everything that you have done and continue to do to keep our class together. And
You're welcome, but of course it was Joni who did it all.
of
I
course,
inherited her role in her files, and her daughter's been very helpful.
Yeah.
As we know, Joni is having her own issues right now, but I just hope everybody will honor her memory and all that she's done for the class by coming to this one,
Yeah.
because it could be our last. And
Yeah. She
But
was
wait,
such a
why-
good
why do
friend.
you, Dave, why do you say it could be our last?
because I'm not gonna last much longer, Dan, unless you take it over.
I-
No, I don't know, maybe it won't be.
Well, can't we have it why can't we have a reunion every year, every couple years?
It's a lot of work, that's why.
Oh.
Well, unless you take it over, Dan.
Oh, Danny, you should be intern to Dave, yeah.
Danny's been looking for something to do. There it is, right there.
You know, Dave, why don't you
Full-time
start
job.
training him now?
Okay,
So,
but
Dave,
That's a good
do we
idea,
go-
Henry.
Do we go on the website to sign up for the, I know the website. Is that where we sign up?
Yeah, that's where you sign up. There's a tab called events.
Okay.
And if you click on that, it tells you you're able to RSVP and pay online.
I think I already did.
No, I don't think so. I think I just made it available for people to pay. And so I
Oh,
paid, and
Oh, you just,
Janice Short
made
Suni
it.
signed up yesterday and she paid.
oh,
So
okay,
we have, nobody, basically, very few people have responded yet,
oh, okay.
but it's on the website and it just describes under the welcome part what the event is and where to go to sign up. So I hope you'll do that, and I hope we'll see all of you there, and looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Me too.
Henry, why don't you keep the ball rolling on adventures?
I'm gonna check out.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Dave.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Bye.
bye, Dave.
We
Bye,
love
Dave.
Hi,
you.
Dave.
Love you.
Bye.
Okay, Henry, take it away. Adventures.
Okay, well, a lot of my adventures are inward. I don't like to travel. I had 2 passports, never used either one of them. Got one in the 60s, and then I got one when one of the monks that I was meditating with got a passport to go back to Tibet. So while we were there, I got a passport. He was doing it. There was nothing else to do, so I did it at the same time, but I've never used it. It's already expired. And
But you've been to Tibet?
no, I don't like to go anywhere. The last time I was on a plane was 2008, and that was for a religious pilgrimage. And otherwise, I'm not really interested. I spend a lot of time watching videos from all over the world that I'd rather just stay here and watch, bring me back a video. It's it's like with my car, if I'm not driving it, I don't like to ride with other people.
Mm.
Same thing in an airplane. If I'm flying the airplane, I'll go, but if I'm not.
But your practice is Tibetan Buddhist meditation with a mantra?
Yeah, it's Mantrayana, which means we use mantra. It's also Vajrayana. And
Do you have a favorite mantra to share with people who'd like to try?
well, there's the 100-syllable one that I like, but it'd take too long.
Is there a shorter
Yeah,
one?
the Tibetans have a really hard time with Sanskrit pronunciation. So in Sanskrit, it's the mantra of the Bodhisattva of compassion, which in Sanskrit is Om Mani Padme Hum. The Tibetans can't say that, so they just say Om Mani Padme Hum. So that's the best they can do.
So is the Dalai Lama part of your lineage?
No.
Do you know what, as a footnote, what's going to happen when he dies?
Well, the head of our lineage, the Karmapa, who's a lot younger, may take over. However, politically, it's a different school, so I don't know. That's their problem. I'm not really concerned with politics at all.
So have you had kind of like an enlightenment experience in meditation as an adventure?
It's more of an ongoing progression, rather than blinding flashing light. And there are two types in some of the other 12-step groups that I go to that are the blinding flashing lights and then the gradual progression of spiritual awakening. So I've been doing it long enough so I can see a progression.
And how would you characterize how you've changed, how you've progressed?
I'm a lot nicer guy than I used to be. Yeah, they tried to draft me in the middle of a semester at UCLA, and I was too busy to apply for a deferment. So they drafted me, and I didn't go. But pretty much a lifelong pacifist, and a lot of my friends that went to Vietnam were just so upset because now, after all of their friends dying and being blown up and in wheelchairs and missing limbs, and now we've got diplomatic relations with North Vietnam or with Vietnam. It's like nothing ever happened. We just shake hands and forget it. Well, that's okay in a boxing match. You can shake hands afterwards, but after a war, you got to realize that later we're going to have a peace treaty, and then we're going to shake hands, and it'll be all forgotten. Well, not for the guys that were there. So I think
So
Really?
what happened when you didn't show up when you were drafted?
no, this was all paperwork. I went through a whole process of medical and just other things to this was all. I didn't just run away to Canada or something. I just stayed here and did what I had to do legally to not go. I could, by the time I was done with them, they were convinced, oh, we don't want this guy. He's a pacifist. He's going to talk all the other guys into, they're all going to quit. They're not going to want to fight either. Keep him away from our soldiers. He's going to ruin our military. So yeah, by the time I was done with them, they didn't want me around their military.
Interesting. Linda, what about you, adventures?
Well, to pick off where Henry left off, I was going to talk about my time in Tibet. So, which was one of my most memorable experiences. It was about 14 years ago, but I can almost always still feel it within me. I went there with my husband and then my son, who was in college at the time. It was in the summer, and we went with, we were taken there with his friend who he grew up with, and they had been in the Jesuit, they had been in the seminary together for 10 years, studying to be a Jesuit priest. And then my husband dropped out at that point, right before he was ordained. And his friend Mike went to Tibet to become a monk after all that. And then ended up teaching in China at the university. So he took a little group, got some Tibetan, he spoke Tibetan language, and he got a couple Tibetan guides, and we went to Tibet, and we did things because he knew everything there. It was so amazing. We would go way up on the mountain, with a monk up there would be giving us a little ceremony, having us drink yak tea.
Which doesn't taste good at all. To me.
Oh, terrible, so terrible. Give us rides up on the yaks, everything. And of course, he supported all these schools, children's schools there, because, they want to teach them all Chinese. So these were these little schools where the children could still learn the Tibetan language, which I don't even think exists anymore, because now the railroad from China is so engraved there, and I don't even think they allow, I mean, they're so, and I think they would put all these children in jail if they knew they were studying the Tibetan language. It's so horrible. But we had these adventures climbing the mountains there, which are all the mountains have. I mean, people are going on pilgrimages up these mountains, and all the flags are all over the place. And the stupas, they're these little things where people actually who die are burned in the stupas, and the smoke goes up. And one thing that we did, which we're not supposed to, I mean, strangers aren't supposed to do this, but he was able to get us to watch a sky burial, which is so amazing. How the most people die is they take them up to the mountain, put them on a stone ledge, and the person who takes them up there cuts their bodies all up into pizzas and lays them there for the vultures to come and get them. And the idea is that their soul is going to be taken up to heaven, and their body is going to be eaten by the vultures. And oh my God, we were, you're not supposed to, we weren't really supposed to watch it, but we did. I've never seen anything like that, with the bodies cut up in pieces and taken away by the vultures. I mean, I saw things there, and of course, people walk around prostrating themselves. The bars, the bazaars there are so colorful, and we got to walk in his hidden cities where the Dalai Lamas lived. And of course, he's in Dharamsala, India now, and went there since 1955 or something, when the Chinese came in, and he's never been able to come back, or they would kill him immediately. And they have that question about what's going to happen when he dies. The Chinese have their next Dalai Lama. In fact, they're already worshiping him. But the Tibetans have someone, that they have someone, they're working. I mean, you really don't know, because you don't know when he's going to die, but they have their scouts on who might be the next person, but that person can't come to Tibet. It's such a sorry thing, because the Chinese consider Tibet their pearl, and that they own it. It's so sad about that. It's so much worse than we got. And we were very lucky. Now you can't do what we were, it's gotten so bad. But we were in the monasteries and with all the monks, and they were just praying, and they were so gracious to us and let us just sit with them and pray. And I never had experience. I mean, we consider ourselves trying to be spiritual and have a spiritual practice. I'm of course Jewish, and he was Catholic. He was going to be a priest, an ordained Jesuit priest. And it wasn't my fault. He came out before he met me. But so we have, but this was the most spiritual experience, way up so high. We had to carry oxygen.
Oh yeah, the oxygen pillows that you toke on.
We had, if we needed, at all times.
Wow.
My son, when we got there, he was helping us all, and he passed out because he was, helping us all, running around, getting us up, just passed out. But it was such an enriching experience that, and when I was in India, about 3 years, right before COVID and everything. And there was a city there, and our guides say they have sky burial here. I never heard that another place had it.
The
But, I mean, we did-
Zoroastrians have always done that.
Huh?
Zoroastrians have always done that.
I didn't can't hear what you.
Zoroastrians, Zorastrians, do
Is
sky
that in
burials.
India?
Yeah, and I
Okay,
think that
'cause-
there are other places too.
Okay, because I hadn't thought about it, but she passed, I mean, we didn't see it or anything, but she said there's sky burial here. And I was, wow. Yeah. So I feel it had an impact in my life. We didn't stay at the best places, and we had a lot of dirt toilets, and I mean, whoa, wow, it was the mess in that respect, but it was such a rewarding.
The Zoroastrians are Persian.
What?
He says they're Persians, they're in Iran, but they're also in India.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it was really rememberable. Of course, having the birth of my children beats that, but
I was in India after a UN women's conference. That we were what some of the first Westerners to go in, and we had those oxygen pillows to toke on. And the two of the people in the group wanted to get married, and I'm a universal life minister, so I married them in front of the Portola, this beautiful palace in Lhasa. So that was definitely an adventure. But one of the first things that I saw was a Tibetan man bound, being carried in the back of the truck. And I asked, what's going on? The Chinese were gonna kill him.
Oh, God.
So there, and you know, it's illegal to have a picture of the Dalai Lama. You could get in big trouble. And Chinese build these ugly, terrible cement buildings and try to crush the culture. It's very sad.
you can't even say Dalai Lama in Tibet. And there were priests, there were police, Chinese police just dressed as monks in the monastery,
Oh,
Make
like
sure.
spies.
in the palace,
Mm.
all over, so that to make sure. And you didn't know where they were, so you had to make sure that you didn't ever say the word or hold it up or any picture, anything of Dalai Lama. Yeah.
For people who haven't had yak butter tea, it's just like oil on top of tea. Like taking olive oil. But I understand they need it for the fat for being such a cold climate. And there's a good movie called Yak in the Classroom.
Oh, yes, I want to see that movie.
It takes place in Bhutan, but it's got a lot of, they do the prayer wheel things. It has
Yeah.
similar practices. Yeah.
We have a lot of, in our house, we have tonkas they were taken off of the walls at that time when the Dalai Lama was left and the Chinese came in. So our friend, my husband's friend, who's the monk, he got someone to bring us out these tonkas, which are these, they're like parchment, and they were hung on the walls. And we got 4 of them. We have them. I gave my daughter some for her house, and we have a couple hanging in our house. And
Do you know who they are?
Huh?
Do you know who they are?
well, I mean, they have the body saka and all the different.
Is it
I
like
don't-
this? Wait.
No, they're the Tonkas.
all different colors, and they have all the
Oh,
different.
like
They're
mandalas.
all
The mandalas and
they're
all
different
the different
deities.
the deities, yeah, all the different deities, the women and the men, and it's I knew when I was there, I remembered who all they were, but God, with my memory now at this age, I can't, I'm happy to remember Lhasa is the capital of Tibet. I mean, I can't remember what I used to remember. So all these names of all these entities that I was able, oh, that. I can't remember the names anymore. I have to look them up.
That was an adventure.
I collect these. This is a Dorja.
Oh, yeah.
Dorje, yeah. Yeah, those are beautiful. Yeah.
They have them in Japan too, huh?
have
They're
some up
they're called, in Japan, they're called Kongo,
Yeah,
but you very rarely see one this big. They're used,
that's a big one.
yeah, they're used with, for ceremonies with the bell in the left hand and the Dorja in the right hand.
Hmm.
This is another one. This is the
Kathy, what have you thought about your adventures that stand out in your life?
Well, it was interesting, actually, when I reread your email yesterday about the topic, I decided to look up the word adventure because, when I think of adventure, I think about Linda's adventure, and I think about climbing a mountain or taking a camping trip on the Sahara Desert or something. And of course, that didn't apply to anything that I've done in my life. But so I looked up adventure, and adventure is sort of like venture. And that is to undertake something unusual for you and go forth with it. That's what I internalized what I was reading. And I just thought, wow, I mean, my life has been such an adventure from beginning to now. And there's so much more that I'm looking forward to do and see that. And I don't mean this to be a cop-out because I could give you specifics, but there were so many things that I just, that I or we, Howard and I, had the guts to ventures that we had the guts to undertake, knowing, I think it was Linda who said she didn't know what she didn't know, or didn't remember what she didn't remember, but we didn't know what we didn't know, but we just had these ideas and went with them. And there were things that we were absolutely not prepared. It was not a conventional road for us. It was just, one night, 29 years ago, a winter night, we went up to visit some friends of ours who lived way up a hill. It was very snowy and cold. And we went to his house because he had just gotten new speakers. And he was a jazz fan. We had met each other actually at a jazz festival years before. And he and Howard just, we went into their house, and the fire was going in the fireplace, and he had these huge speakers, and they started playing jazz music so loud. And his wife and I closed the door to the living room to the hall, closed the door from the hall to the kitchen. And then we went into the kitchen and we just started to cook together and to just catch up. And then, after about 20 minutes or half an hour, she went and said, dinner is served, and table was set in the dining room. And the guys walked in and they raised their glass and they said, we'd like to drink a toast to the first annual Vail Jazz Festival. He was a lawyer and a real estate investor. What did he know from putting on a festival? And I went, yeah, right. Tomorrow he'll have forgotten all about it because he's had too much to drink. And the next day we left Vail. We went to Costa Rica, which was the trip we had planned. And we came back about 3 weeks later, and the gentleman, Les, called Howard and he said, I booked the first act. And Howard said, "Where's that for what?" Well, we had the first jazz festival, and at the end of the festival, one of the musicians who's, I don't know whether you know jazz musicians, but John Clayton, who may be one of the most famous musicians, jazz musicians on the planet, he came to the first festival. That was a gift. And he said to Howard, as he was leaving with his big bass to go back to Denver, he said, "Do you think you'll ever do this again?" And Howard said, "Absolutely." And John said, "Would you do anything different?" And he said, "John, I want to start something in the way of education to give young musicians an opportunity to work with older musicians." And he had given John, Howard had given John a check for the cartage of his bass, which was over and above the contract. And John tore up the check and he said, "This is my contribution to the first Vail Jazz Education Program." And over the year, he and Howard worked together to develop the Vail Jazz Foundation, to develop the Vail Jazz Workshop, which was named the year of the pandemic the best jazz educational program in the United States. So, and of course, who was going to run the workshop? Not the musical part, but who was going to bring in 12 kids, house them, feed them, take care of them? You, Kath, that's your job. So it's been an adventure for sure. We're probably one of the top 3 festivals in jazz festivals in the country. And that's all Howard. And it was, we didn't know what we didn't know. It was completely organic. Needless to say, the gentleman who we started it with said after the first year, "I wouldn't do this again. It's too much work." So anyway, so that's been a huge adventure in our life, but there have been many others. A lot of fun things. We were one of the first groups, if you will. There were 17 of us who went into China when it opened. And that was an adventure and an experience that was unbelievable. But we've always been risk takers and adventure and seeking adventure, but we've never, well, my husband tried bullfighting too, but we've really been, like climbing Kilimanjaro or that kind of thing. But it's been more venture than adventure, if you will.
Oh, good. That's wonderful that you had a part of building something that was so constructive and helpful to so many people and enjoyable.
Yeah.
Did you say that the other person who started it with you, like that one night talked about, he bowed out?
Yes.
Wow.
Running a festival, when you don't know, you just do what you have to do because you've made a commitment. But when you look back after a season, just like I'm looking back now, it's a lot of work and a lot of energy.
Wow.
And this gentleman thought it would be really fun to have a bunch of musicians and basically enjoy it. What he didn't realize was first you have to find the musicians, then you have to write the contracts, then you have to do the travel plans for them, and then the housing plans for them, and then you have to curate the shows. When you do a festival, they don't come and say, "Okay, well, we're going to play where we're going to play," and and then the next group comes on. No, it's rehearsal times, and you should see the charts every year. Rehearsal times in each artist, and we had 42 artists there this year. So it's
just the emails and phone calls are enormous.
Yeah. And remember, emails were in 1994, not that easy to send, right? I mean, there were a lot of phone calls and it was faxes back and forth. Yeah. So, yeah, it's huge and intense labor, and it's not just the summer, it's year round. And I hope it survives, you know.
Are you going to be part of the next one?
Yes, I will continue to be involved with Vail Jazz as long as it lasts. But I can't do what he did. I was his sidekick, and I did what I was told, except the workshop was always mine. But but no, I mean, it takes so many skills and so much knowledge and so many contacts. And I mean, he literally worked 16 hours a day. We might travel maybe 3 to 4 weeks a year, but other than that, he was at his desk. It was his passion. It was his mission. It was his.
Was he a musician as well?
Couldn't carry a tune, tried the saxophone, the dog ran away. I mean, just no,
You
not
know,
at all.
what I get intuitively is that he is exploring music in the other dimension, and says that you can create here. There's music is available there too. And I guess it comes from your imagination and it manifests.
Well, he's a businessman, an attorney, so he's on that end, right?
Well, he was a businessman. He was an investor. He was incredibly focused. Tireless and absolutely undaunted about anything in his life. So he was and a work ethic which was almost manic. So, I mean, jazz was his life. The Jazz Festival was his life. It was his reason for getting up in the morning. It was the reason that he never gave up, that he was never going to die, that neither of us knew until 20 minutes before he died, or he never knew, or maybe he did on another dimension, but we just didn't know that he was not going to make it. So he would never, his mind would never go to what if it doesn't work? He never ever, his mind never did that. So of course, no matter what he undertook, he was going to be successful, and he was in business, with the Jazz Festival, with everything. So he was unique. If you want to know a little bit about him, go on the vailjazz.org website and see what some of the videos that have been made about him. His memorial service in Vail was just absolutely unbelievable, overwhelming. He touched just so many people. So that was the main event for the last third of his life, our life, you know, maybe more than a third, since I'm not 90 yet.
Did your son end up liking jazz?
Not
Greg?
much.
Hmm.
Not much. Me neither. It's not my. I mean, I appreciate it, but I've been involved with the classical music festival in Vail since the beginning, and that goes back to the early 80s. So I'm still on the board there, and that's my passion, always was. So.
Great. Danny, what about you? I know you've had adventures. It's probably hard to think about which one to start with. You're muted.
Yeah. Well, okay. I guess one adventure that was very meaningful was in 1960, 1961, Kent and I went to Europe together and traveled all around, and you could stay in a youth hostel for a quarter. It was really 25. Anyway, we hitchhiked all over Europe and it was, it was back when Europe was really Europe and not like today where it's homogenized. And anyway, it was fascinating. And so that was a big adventure, traveling all around Europe and the Middle East, and then in Greece and Turkey and Israel. So that was one big adventure that lasted almost a year.
How did you fund it?
Well, we dropped out. I dropped out of Santa Monica City College and worked with Kent for his uncle, doing well. I don't want to go into it. It was cockamamie things, but we did get lots of money for them. Well, it was we. Well, here, no, this is being recorded, Gail. I can't. I'm
Okay.
not. But
The statute of limitations is long gone.
we took.
Feel
We-
free to incriminate yourself at any time.
Well, anyway, we made we worked for his uncle and made money, and then we took the a Holland American line from New York to England. It took 10 days and 10 nights to cross the Atlantic. Anyway, and so then, we just hitchhiked and then eventually got a motor scooter and went everywhere and camped out and met lots and lots of people. And that was very interesting. Oh, because like in places like, former Yugoslavia, we would come into a little village and the whole village would come to just stare at us. And so we had, interesting experiences that then when I went later with Maxine, my wife, and I wanted everything to be the same as it was, and of course it wasn't. Let me just go on a tangent, listening to all of you about Tibet. So I'm reading this book. I'm in the middle of it. The Jew in the Lotus. Have you heard of this book, The Jew in the Lotus?
Yeah, I've heard it.
You would like it because it all takes place, a bunch of people like Joel Rosenberg, rabbis, people who, they went to give the Dalai Lama a Torah, and it's all about them introducing Judaism and learning about Tibet. And anyway, it's an interesting book, The Jew in the Lotus. But let me just here, I need to talk about something else. Because Dave Kuhn said this could be our last reunion. And that was just like a big shock to me to hear him say that. And see, I think that I've been in such denial about where I am in the life cycle for whatever reason, that I'm just in this dream world about aging, which is nuts because lots of close people to me have died, and very close people are very ill with, Parkinson's, cancer, etc. But so I don't know. It's just confusing to me how I could be in such denial and be shocked to hear Dave say this could be our last reunion. Well, so I'm going to make sure that I pay the money and go. yeah, so, okay, so anyway, that was just a little psychological aside. But the other adventure, I guess, being at the birth of my two sons, and yeah, I can't think of any other real adventures I've had in my life, except for that 1 year where I had no responsibility at all, just being a tourist. And that was, yeah, that was wonderful. Anyway, now I have to think. See, I've been very, with COVID, I got very, very, I contracted my life down to my house in the neighborhood, walking my friends' dogs, and then and being kind of agoraphobic, not going, being like Henry, just wanting to be in, well, not in my house, but outside, but not going out in the world much. But now I did find out I haven't traveled for a long, long time because I wasn't in a relationship. I just don't want to travel by myself, but I think I might have to if I'm going to travel before I die.
Where do you want to go?
Well, even though politically I hate the country now too, well, because like what we were talking about, but I did, I lived in Israel from 69 to 71. I taught at Tel Aviv University, and then I made a lot of my good close friends. So I'd like to go there one last time to Israel just to see my friends, and that I could do alone, because once I got there, I would know people. But then I'd like to go to Europe and Paris and London and the Cotswolds, the little villages in England that are like Shakespearean times, but being alone, it doesn't, you look at this Eiffel Tower lit up at night and it's beautiful and romantic. But then if I'm there alone, it doesn't sound that enjoyable. So Linda, Kathy, Gail, Henry, if you know of a nice woman in her 70s who wants to travel. Anyway, so yeah, but the last thing I'll say is I thought it was wonderful and great and very emotional in a positive way with Dave this morning and talking. Linda, I'm sure I feel the same way you do about, well, and Gail too, and about what's happened to the country. And oh, well, no, really, I mean, it sounds histrionic, but it does feel like the Weimar Republic, Germany in the late 30s, that was tremendously divided, communist, fascist, it's not as bad as that. But I mean, no, I just want to start cursing and I won't. But it's just incomprehensible to me how this could happen. Although I do have one, social media, which I despise because I think it's more antisocial than social. And really, I'm not alone in that belief. I just read in the New York Review of Books, a very intelligent, neuroscientist who's also a computer internet, person, has said how the internet and how cell phones has changed our psyches and changed our way of interaction, and
true.
anyway, I don't want to start cursing and then I'll stop. I didn't get a cell phone until just about 2 years ago because of COVID, and then there were fires here and I might have to be evacuated, in the Berkeley Hills. But yeah, if it wasn't for those, how did we get a fascist elected president of the United States Well, here, this is what I hope, and nothing against, I don't want to really, here's what, if they had found Mike Pence and hanged him with the Capitol in in the background, hanged him, and they're smiling. And on one side of him, one of those guys who wore Camp Auschwitz, the other side of him, 6 million weren't enough. Those guys, those guys were there, Gail, with their T-shirts. And I just wonder if they had hanged the vice president, whether people like Mitch McConnell and, these not crazy Republicans, how they'd feel, Anyway, I'm
Well,
blabbing.
We thought that after the insurrection, but that lasted a couple months.
Yeah. And after Mar-a-Lago, it's the worst national security breach in the whole country's history. And all the Republicans, and I shouldn't say I shouldn't say that, but they're upset that he's been victimized by the government instead of what he did. Anyway, I'm sorry, Gail.
I don't think we have to worry about him running for president. He may not be out of prison by that time.
Yeah, no, I hope, anyway, it all started here, but Gail, this was so therapeutic because even though I go ranting and I get angry, and then I say, no, I have to remember there's Dave Kuhn and people that are really decent, kind, good, ethical, moral,
Yeah.
and they're not like the QAnon people, that there's a distinction and a dichotomy between them. And so thank God you had Dave Kuhn and open up. No, really, it was so good for me to hear.
Yeah, I agree. So my adventure is I met a woman from Cairo who was at an education program for teachers at Chico State. And she said, well, come and visit me. I said, great. And she said, we'll travel, we'll go, because I love to snorkel. We'll go to the Red Sea and I can hang out on the beach and you can snorkel. And we set up a time and da-da-da. And so I got to the airport in Cairo and she was not there. And there are all these women in burqas, of course, speaking Arabic. And I'm getting a little nervous. So I tried to call, but she didn't answer. So then what they did is they found at the airport, they found a taxi driver who could speak English. And I had her address. So it was very complicated, Cairo traffic, but he found her big apartment building. And by the grace of God, she was walking out just as we pulled in. And she said, Gail, what are you doing here? And I said, I thought you were going to lift me. She said, I'll lift you from the airport. I thought you were going to lift me from the airport. She said, oh, the traffic was too bad. And so, she had this little 3-room and a little living room, tiny kitchen, tiny bathroom flat. And her husband never met me because he didn't want me to be there. So I was there, I think 2 nights sleeping on the floor. And then she said, my husband said, you have to go. And I was going to travel with her. So I hadn't made travel plans. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go to the Hilton because I know that they will have a concierge and they will help me. And also I really wanted to go to Tahrir Square and interview the people who were doing the uprising, and it turned out the Hilton was a block away. So that was perfect. So at the Hilton, I didn't want to fly to Dahab. I wanted to take the bus so I could see the Sinai. And so they helped me get the bus ticket. And then there was a travel agent. The guy said, ordinarily I wouldn't work with one person because I won't make any money on you. But he set up a whole trip for me with flying to, different places and a trip on the Nile. And he would check on me and he would find out, oh, someone can't pick you up, so I'm going to arrange someone else to pick you up. So he really saved the day. And that was my adventure.
That's great. How was the Nile? That's one thing I'd really like to do, going down the Nile.
It wasn't anything spectacular. I mean, it was nice. You could see people farming along the way and that kind of thing, but it was nothing to write home to mother about.
Danny, when you went on that 10-day voyage, a boat, did you leave from New Jersey?
Maybe, I can't, New York.
Because
New-
in 1961, I took that same boat.
Oh, yeah, the
from-
was it the Maasdam or
It
the
was a
Rotterdam?
Holland American student boat.
Yeah.
Was it the Gruta beer?
maybe.
Yes. I didn't remember that.
Bobby Futterman and I were on that ship in 1962.
Wow.
I was in, you were?
Yes,
Bobby
that's,
Futterman.
1962?
that's where I met Howard. Yeah.
Oh,
I
really?
was on that in 1962. I met from Berkeley. It was or was it 63? Patty Robeson and I went. Oh my God, the group beer, 10 days student trip with all this. That's when I learned how to drink beer. I'd never drunk beer before. Oh my God.
It was actually 8 days, and I still have the program, which I found. I have an actual diagram of the ship with the library and all the other things.
Oh my God. And there were all these lectures and all these people. I learned all about communism in Finland, and I loved it. I was so stimulated. All these lectures and people from other parts of the world talking about things, and so fabulous.
And Kathy, that's very romantic. That's where you met Howard in the.
Oh.
No, it wasn't the least bit romantic. He was absolutely obnoxious. He was drunk all the time.
I
And
know.
he would get a Scotch Boilermaker for 11 cents. That was a beer and a shot of Scotch. And I was on the ship. I was an entertainer. I was into folk music, and so I went with my guitar, and I would lead hootenannies in the library. And I mean, he was gross and disgusting and awful.
It's gross.
I wanted nothing to do with him. So no,
So what happened?
not romantic in the least.
What happened? Now we have to hear what changed.
Well, we came back to school and started, we ran into each other at UCLA. He had been suspended from UCLA because, or he had dropped out because his grades were so bad.
Mr.
I mean-
Focus, it was focused on beer.
He wasn't 18, he wasn't yet 19, he was totally nutsoid. And anyway, so I saw him and I thought, oh God, there's that crazy guy. And said, hello. And he said, well, how was your trip? And he was sober, so he seemed so nice. And we sat down and we started to talk. And I realized that he had a lot of substance and he was interesting in his views about what he had seen. And I don't know, maybe he was bullshitting me, but anyway, so a few weeks later, we went out on our first date. He took me to a jazz club. The next week, I took him to see Rudolph Serkin at Royce Hall. And I found out that he had a lot of depth. He was really smart. Vietnam was cooking up, and so he had, sort of knuckled down. And the first semester he got straight A's. He was taking 21 units, and I thought, how
Hmm.
does one get straight A's at UCLA with 21 units? So I thought, I kept having more and more and more respect for him, and yeah, it worked out 60 years later. Yeah,
Did you say 60?
60. Yeah, it was 60 years ago that he and I started to
Huh.
date.
God,
Yeah.
congratulations. That's fantastic and wonderful. 60 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What
Linda,
an accomplishment.
that was the great year.
how did you meet your ex-Catholic, almost priest husband?
What'd you say?
How did you meet your ex,
Oh,
almost?
well,
priest-
he's a psychologist. Well, after he went out of the order, he went down to San Diego and worked with Carl Rogers. And he ended up becoming a psychologist. And I had gone back to practice. I was a school teacher, and then I ended up practicing as a marriage and family therapist. And we were in the same clinic kind of group, and we were working together. So that's how we went.
And when you first saw him, did you think, or did you think,
No. I was married already to my other husband, and he wasn't my type at all. And not at all. And in fact, we were friends. We were really, really good friends. And my first husband was, I thought, my type. No, that was a disaster, my type. So he was basically my friend. And if someone you told me I was going to marry him, I would have told you you're crazy. But we fell for each other through friendship. And one day he just asked me out, can you go out? And I said, it's a date? Yes. And that we just grew together. And, it wasn't a big passionate thing. We just were friends, and I felt I was safe. I found my mate, and it was so different because I'd had kind of a very tumultuous marriage. So that's why I didn't fall for him.
Well, can I
Okay,
just,
and then nice seeing everybody. I have to go visit Dr. Arcady on the next block, my podiatrist, so.
it's
I don't
good
wanna-
to see you,
I don't wanna be-
Henry.
I don't wanna
Thanks for
be
tuning in.
late For my pedicure.
bye, Henry. Have a
Thank
good
you.
pedicure. Well, could I just say, do you remember, Gail, a sociologist, Philip Slater? He wrote The Romantic Love Complex. And this is a long time ago. But anyway, so Linda, according to him, see that people get, in American society, then people think, oh, there's only like one and only, and that I will meet this Ms. Right or Mr. Right, and an angel will shoot an arrow and hit me in the heart,
Yeah.
and there'll be fireworks. No, really, and lots of sex, lust and just romance. But that, by definition, usually doesn't last, a long time. But that's why divorce and separation are problems. But then the way Linda got married, it was first friendship, first a relationship and intimacy and trust, and it was a friendship first, and then became romantic. Anyway, that's one I've heard, that why statistically arranged marriages like in India or Southeast Asia, they really last when they're negotiated by the parents, and the parents kind of choose the partners, and somehow, no, they last. And I had students, many students at Cal, their mother and fathers were arranged and strangers before they met. And it worked out. Anyway, it's just interesting to me.
I
That was
just did
one-
a Zoom yesterday with an Indian couple and a couple in Georgia and the East Coast. And the Indian couple had an arranged marriage, met briefly, talked on the phone once, and they're great. They have a wonderful marriage, wonderful family. Yeah.
Well,
because-
it's an expectation.
And because they do it scientifically, they don't
Yeah.
do it on your physical chemistry. They do, you're both Brahmins, you have similar family backgrounds, you're vegetarians, you don't drink, you believe in this and that. So you don't have a lot of cultural differences to work through.
Yes, that's so interesting.
They're on my YouTube, so they're interesting. Okay, my
I
dear.
gotta go. I have a.
Yeah,
12
we'll,
o'clock
we'll,
date.
we'll say goodbye. And if you have any ideas for topics that we should discuss in October, anything come across your head? Danny?
Well, I like
Thanks,
gender
Dave.
roles.
Thanks,
Gender
Linda.
roles.
Thanks, everybody. Sorry, Kathy, I wish you.
Yes, Kathy, me
Kathy,
too.
yeah.
And
And our
I
love.
agree. What Gail said, then think of us as a bereavement group also. You
Well,
know,
that's nice. Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
you guys. It's nice to be with old friends. And so I'm so glad to have joined you today. Thank you, Gail.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Gail.
Yeah, but yeah, do feel free if you need to cry or laugh or whatever, we're available.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks.
Danny, do we want to talk about gender roles next time?
oh, well, it
Because
was
we
just-
tried that before, kind of.
Oh, okay, or I don't know, addiction and recovery. No, because this is recorded and then people can't.
Oh, the
Well, you don't have to come up with it now, everybody.
Okay, I'll think.
about it.
I'll think.
Okay,
But thank you.
thank you. It's good to see you all.
Nice to
Bye.
see everyone. Bye-bye.